When I was studying to be an educator, I studied history and political science, and I have a concentration in secondary education, which is 6th through 12th grade. But let's disregard that. Let's disregard that. We don't need to know that. That's just a little side note. But when I was studying to be an educator, for many students, they can get lost with a lot of historical information. So the one thing that I always try to do, which I feel that many people should do, especially when talking about history or science, is they should have a big question. And so today's big question is, can another civil war happen within the United States? And just remember that question, and let me give you the information that I want to give you. When I was in my senior year of high school, which was 2018, I was enrolled in Educators of Tomorrow. And I don't know how other schools do it, but this was done at the Career and Technical Center, which was a walk from the high school. Anyway, there was the teacher that taught me. She was also studied to be a history teacher herself. And many times we would talk about history and the government and things like that nature. One day she informed me, and there was only three kids in the class. There were 3 kids in the morning. There was a morning class and an evening class. I had the evening class, but in total she had 6 students in the whole program of Educators of Tomorrow. But anyway, she told me and the 2 other girls that I had in my class that she was, getting her master's, and she was concentrating on the Civil War. And in one of her courses, they were discussing how while the tangible, physical, the warlike aspect of the Civil War ended, in reality, the social conflicts that arose during that time period, did not. And I just don't think it was just on the basis of slavery either. I think there were also, I'm not too sure. She didn't really give us too much information of what was being discussed in that class. She just gave us that idea. But I think it doesn't just deal with slavery. I think it also deals with other topics of social issues that were going on during that time period as well. But anyway, I was a senior in high school, and I really didn't understand what she was talking about. I thought it was a good idea, to discuss and talk about, but I didn't really understand what she was saying. Even during that time period of when I was in high school, there were so many people talking about it as well. There's so much polarization going on in the United States. And I didn't really see it then either. I said, yeah, people like being Republicans and some people like being Democrats, and I went on about my day. But, from 2018 to 2024, and with the last election we had, I understand what she meant by there is a social civil war kind of going on, or that aspect of it that is happening. Let me see. So there's that aspect of it. And like I said before, I see how it's kind of becoming, that whole idea of a social civil war has become more relevant due to the extremism that is popping up within our country, both on the left and right side, and due to the extremeness of polarization in our country as well. And during that time of when I was in high school, I don't know if this happens in all schools around the country, but in 12th grade, at least in my high school and the ones that are near me, in 12th grade, you learn about United States civics. You learn about civics. And my civics grade teacher, he told us that within the federal government, at least, it likes to it acts as a pendulum, when it comes to the political parties. One year it may be right, and then the next year may be in the middle, and then that next year maybe go left. And it kind of is just a pendulum in its swings. However, I read an article that since the Obama administration, the political parties have been almost trying to enact vengeance with one another. And hearing that, it kind of disappoints me, because we elect candidates, whether they be a presidential candidate or those who are within the congressional body, to be public servants. They have the feeling that, and James Madison, he believed this too, since we are not perfect angels, we developed a federal government to kind of help the average citizen, who, like I said, is not a perfect little angel, to help us. Since we aren't that smart, since we aren't that good, they're supposed to help us. That was just an idea, especially of how the founding fathers, those who went along with federalism, that's how they seen the average common person. They need help, and so we need a federal government. But I think we do need federal government, just not in that sense. But anyway, the candidates, they're supposed to be public servants, whether or not, and they're supposed to help people with the laws that they enact. And when I read that, and when we think about, they're just trying to, they have this act of vengeance of, they elected Donald Trump, and then they elected Joe Biden, and then they elected Donald Trump again. Well, they didn't elect it, we did, because they had that idea, and what they did is they started pitting us against one another in order just to get to where they wanted to be, just because the political candidates themselves do not like one another. And that is wrong. That is very wrong for them to do, to create, and what they're doing is they're creating so much social tension among the citizens themselves. So much social tension, that we as citizens can't even come to our common senses because we're acting with emotion and say, hey, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem right, what neither person is saying, what neither political party is saying. We have to stop thinking like that. And when I think about the idea of there being so much tension within our nation, so much social tension, because the political parties are doing that, I don't know how many people listened in history class. I'm not too sure, but one of my favorite things to do when I was in school was when we examined political cartoons. They were some of my favorite. And the one thing that I vividly remember, one of my favorite ones was the drunken Irishman on the powdered keg. And, during that time period, if you know anything about the Irish, many times they were depicted as being drunks. They were depicted the same way blacks were, and they were depicted as animals or beasts. And most of that hatred just came from the simple fact that not only were they poor, but mostly just because they were Catholic, and many of the people that immigrated from Europe, especially England, the United Kingdom, were fleeing out of fear of the Catholic Church, and many of those Irish people, were Catholic. But that's just a side note. But let's go back to the idea of the drunken Irish. And I'm not trying to stereotype anybody. That's just how they were depicted during, those days of the 1800s, the 1700s, maybe well even into the 1900s. There's actually even a book, if you want to read it. It's actually called, I don't know who wrote it. I forget the author's name, but it's called When the Irish Become White, if you want to learn a little bit more about that. But that was just a side note, like I said. But the big idea is, the political cartoon, the drunken Irishman, and he's sitting on this powder keg, and he's wailing his arms. But for me, instead of seeing that individual, who I see is Uncle Sam, and he's sitting on that keg, that powdered keg, and beside of him are the donkey and the elephant, representing our political parties, and they both have matches, and Uncle Sam, he doesn't even notice. He's just sitting there minding his business, and they're both just telling him things, but they both got matches. And me, I feel like there are people like me who are trying to tell Uncle Sam. We're trying to tell Uncle Sam, hey, be careful, don't listen to both of them. They're just trying to tell you things to get you riled up. Think, Uncle Sam. Think, citizens of the United States. But I'm telling you this analogy because I honestly do feel that with the social tension that is happening within the United States, that we are sitting on that keg. And I feel that with the social tension that is going on, I don't know when it will, but I do feel like it is going to blow. And maybe, I don't know if the Civil War, like I asked in the big question, will be one of violence. But when I saw January 6th, whether that was something right or something wrong, when I saw that, it showed me exactly what I needed to know to answer my question. And it showed me that when people get stirred up enough, like they have always been throughout history, it's the same way they were during the American Revolution for Independence, the same way Lenin did to overthrow and become power to create communist Russia or the Soviet Union, the same way Fidel Castro did. And I'm not saying that the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or whoever, is like these people, but I'm saying it's the same tactic that has been used throughout time. Is that when you are able to get people riled up enough to do your own bidding, this is the type of thing that I was afraid of. And I seen exactly what I needed to see January 6th, that people can go to that limit of extremism that caused the Civil War. If they're willing to fight for what they believe in. And not only that, though, the founding fathers, they feared people more than they feared a king. And that is the truth. They feared the power of many more than they feared the power of one. Not just because what they seen during the American independence, but what they seen during the French Revolution. And those same poor people during the French Revolution that got riled up by the rich, that got riled up by the intellectuals, they beheaded the same people that told them to start the revolution. I want to tell you this. I don't believe, like they say off of Men in Black, the man, Tommy Lee Jones character, he says, people are smart. No, the person is smart, but people are dumb. And I'm not trying to say we're dumb, but when you get riled up through emotion, your logic, it goes out the window. And that's just something that I think we should think about. Like I said, I don't know if we will get to the extreme of a civil war, where we're going to be in the same situations of like Israel and Palestine now, or something like that's been happening in the Middle East, or things that happen in African countries, or things of that nature. But I do believe there will be some type of civil unrest, and I do believe that things will get serious, and I do believe that people will begin acting maybe violent towards one another, maybe to not the extreme level of a whole war on a nation level, but I do feel that it's coming to that point. And I say this not only with what I seen during January 6th, not only with what's happening between the political parties, but I've also heard like Democratic governors of Illinois, of Washington, of California, they're talking about gearing up against Trump and the Republican Party to ensure that what he and the Republicans in the Congress are going to instill won't affect their states. I've even watched a YouTube video, and there were even people in the comments of the YouTube video, talking about, they no longer talk to their family members that they've talked to because they voted for Trump. People were getting divorced because their partner was a MAGA supporter. They had friends for 40, 50 years, and they said those person are MAGA supporters or they're Trump supporters, and they're no longer talking to them. Like, these are the same things that happened during the during the time of the Civil War. Like they say, history is an open book, but we are not using it. Like, we need to be careful, because like I said, this powder keg is going to explode if we're not careful. And I'm seeing the signs. I saw the signs, like the song says. But jokes aside, like, it's very serious when a person, like, when you just sit down and you start looking at all the signs of that happened throughout history, not just happened within the United States, but happened in other countries as well. Like, we have to be careful, because like I said, this social tension is going to erupt in something that we probably will not come back from. We have to be very, very careful. Very careful. So, let's go back to our big question. Can a civil war happen? And like I said, I don't know if it will be an actual war, with guns, bombs, explosions, the whole 9 yards, or will just be some type of civil unrest. Maybe we'll get something like the Civil Rights Movement. I don't know. But let's think about, okay, the question is yes. How are we going to prevent it? What are some suggestions? I have 3 suggestions. They're not 100%, I don't know if they will work, but here are just some suggestions that I'm going to suggest. Basically, my first one is that we need to start picking candidates who display civic obedience, who can execute civic discourse properly, and who have qualities of presidents who we felt did America justice within the past. And with civic obedience, we know good and well that the candidates we are picking, if they have so many rumors around them, whether or not they're real or true, why are we wasting our time with them? We know that Donald Trump has, that's the one thing too. Let me go away from Donald Trump. But if I feel like, let me say this, as American citizens, we understand our duties and we understand our laws. We understand our rights. If my candidate is not able to follow the same laws the average American is, why should I vote for them? If you're going about trying to avoid paying your taxes, why should I vote for you when I have to pay my taxes? If you're going about and people are accusing you of infidelity and of being inappropriate with children or doing inappropriate things with adult entertainers, why should I be voting with you when I, the American citizen, find that wrong, and to a degree it is against the law to do some of those things? Why should I be voting for you? So that's the civic obedience I'm talking about. We need to have candidates to a degree. I understand people aren't perfect. I do understand people aren't perfect. But if they're being accused of such high allegations of that, we should not be voting for them. They shouldn't even be running in our elections. I'm sorry. What was the other thing? Executing proper civic discourse. That is something that I feel like if you cannot communicate ideas properly and you have to throw dirt on other people's names, I'm not going to vote for you. That is why I did not vote in this election, because it's disrespectful. That is not how I feel like a candidate should be running. They need to be respectful. They're up there, like I said, to be a public servant, to have their ideas, to show that they themselves have planned out what they want to do for this country and how they want to help everybody, not just a 5% of the population or just their supporters. They should be out there saying, yeah, well, I understand I represent the Republican Party. I hope that some of my ordeals can help those who are Democrats as well. Like, we need healthy balance. We need people like that who not just have a healthy balance, but like I said, are going to execute civic discourse properly. And not only that, when I was intro to public policy, I had a fascinating professor, the greatest. I will admire her to the day I die. But she said that if a candidate does not have 3 focus areas, 3 problems they want to focus on, and cannot give you 2 to 3 things on how they want to solve it, then you probably shouldn't vote for them. And I'm going to be honest. When I heard Trump up there say that he had a concept of a plan, I immediately turned off the whole national debate. I said, I'm not watching this anymore. Because, first of all, that's not, like I said, that's something that I was taught and something that now I abide by. I don't know how you say it, but something that I live by, that a candidate should fulfill. And I think that's true. I think that's something we as citizens need to start looking at and understanding. Does this person have any type of focus areas, real focus areas, not these, he might have focus areas, both of them might have focus areas, but they were generalized things that are so institutionalized and so deadlocked, we're not going to get to a solution to. I need a candidate who really is looking into their constituents' lives and understanding the problems that they're going through. So there's that. So the civic discourse, the civic obedience, and understanding and having qualities that good presidents had before. I mean, when I think of good presidents, I think of people like, we think about George Washington, we think about FDR, we think about Teddy Roosevelt, we think about Abraham Lincoln, people who had qualities of bravery, of sacrifice, who want to unite the nation when in times of trouble, instead of trying to divide them. And like I said, I understand not all people are perfect. We understand our founding fathers had slaves, which we understand is a moral wrong today. They say that Abraham Lincoln, the rumor is that he could have been in the closet. That's the least of my worries, though. I've heard that FDR, he had affairs. I understand that people are not perfect, but I'm trying to find good qualities of people that are running in the elections, and that's how I vote for people. Do they some way exhibit qualities of people that I looked up to in the past? And so that's how I do it. So there's those 3 things for that one thing. The second thing, we as American citizens, we need to learn how to read. 54% of adult Americans between the ages of 16 and 74 read at a 6th grade level or below. For a country as wealthy as ours, it makes no sense. And I get that there are some, that statistic probably includes those who are English language learners and those who may have cognitive or learning disabilities, who might not be able-minded. That aside, though, if you are not one of those individuals and you cannot learn how to read, and I'm not trying to attack you, but it is so important, because when you are not literate, this is why we are not financial literate. This is why we are not health literate. This is why we cannot read our policies. This is why they put out the Project 2025, and it's a 900-page book, but 54% of Americans cannot read it. How are you going to understand what this country is what's going to happen to this country in 4 years if you can't digest 900 pages? 6th graders cannot read 900 pages of policy. And yet we have adult Americans who are in their 20s, their 30s, and their 40s reading at or below a 6th grade level. And, there might be some 6th graders within the school system now that, are phenomenal readers, but that's not everybody. My brother was one of them. At the 6th grade, he was already reading on a college level, but he's the exception to the rule. And I need those who truly are having struggle reading. If you're an adult, go to some adult classes. They have adult education classes. Go to those. Start having good relationship with your librarians in the libraries. And that's a shame too that within our society today, there's this big idea of, dismantling the library, disfunding them, removing books. That I'm not gonna start a debate on. Some books I do understand, some books it's like, okay, this don't make no sense. But yeah, if there's not a school library in a school, as a parent, you need to start advocating for it, because that is very important as well. So there's that. And my last one, with the idea of advocating, we need to start being active and being advocates within our community. I feel like as Americans, we have always promoted individualism and being independent, and that's a good thing, but I think that it's coming to the point of, and Tupac said this himself. I was watching an interview the other day. Don't ask me why, it just came up on my feed. But he's talking about, we live in a world where it's all give me, take, stomp. That's what he said. And I think that is what's happening within our communities, and I feel like that's why our communities are in some degree failing. It's why our society is failing. It's too much individual. And like I said, that's okay. It's okay to be independent. It's okay to do the things that you want to do. But why do we always, when we're trying to climb the ladder, bring others down? Why is it that when, in order for somebody to succeed, somebody else has to fail? And I just don't think that's the case anymore. I think that in our communities, if we see things that are wrong, we need to start speaking up. If we see our schools failing, we need to start saying things as parents and within the community. If we see things that are happening that wrong within, the public service places, like our hospitals, like our schools, like our churches, like within our police force, we need to start saying things. Like I said, the founding fathers feared the power of many more than they feared the power of one. We are the people. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry to get all crazy constitutionally, but that's the truth. We are the people. If we feel like something isn't right, we feel like something isn't right, and we need to stop. We have to look past the political party, and we honestly have to tell ourselves, is this right for the general community? Is this right for the general society? And if it's no, then we need to start saying something. But it is what it is. Those were my things. To pick candidates who have civic obedience, who can execute civic discourse, who display good defining qualities that we define as good. To become active readers and to be active and advocate within our communities. And I don't tell you this, I don't make these videos trying to prove to anybody that I'm good or smarter than anybody. I hope nobody feels like that when they watch this. But there's a quote that I like. I forget exactly who said it, but it's from a man, I don't know, from the 40s, 50s, or 60s. But he says, a smart man owns all he can to the ignorant, a rich man owes all he can to the poor, and a free man owes all he can to the enslaved. And I'm not saying that I'm smarter than anybody, but as somebody who studies this, somebody who, I became an educator because I wanted to help people. I admired people. I wanted to help students understand perspectives and learn the skills of a historian so they can break down and analyze and synthesize information so they can develop their own viewpoints and understand other people's viewpoints. I do this because I just want to help people to some degree. And, it feels like an injustice if I don't spread this information that I have. So yeah. So that's all I have, that big question. And then those were my suggestions. And, take the information as you want, spread it, keep it to yourself, disregard it, ignore it. But that's all I have. And I hope that everyone has a good day, because I'm about to be late for work.